Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl, Dr. Rhonda M. Lawson, and I think I'm frozen. If y'all can see me, let me know because I'm not sure what's happening right now, but there we go. Hey, everybody, it's your girl, Dr. Rhonda M. Lawson, and I'm back with another episode of the Horizons Author Lounge. And this is a very special edition because well, every week is a special edition. but later on, I'm going to be talking with my daughter who just published her first poetry book. But first, I want to introduce you to a very special author whom I met at the Washington Writers Conference. And we got into a really good conversation. And he told me what he writes about. And I was like, you have got to be on the show. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself and talk about the book. But this book is really, really interesting, and I'm quite sure it's something that you're going to want to read yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Edward Feroli. Did I say your name correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Yay! Okay, how are you tonight? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and thank you for deciding to be a part of the
Thanks for
show.
having me.
Oh, my
I
pleasure.
enjoyed talking to you at that meeting.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And you were talking you we talked about a few different subjects, but you're really, really interesting. And so when you told me about your book, I just felt that it was something that everybody needed to hear about. And I think I'm frozen again. So hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I hear you fine.
Perfect. Okay, so can you tell us a bit? Well, first of all, before you tell us about the book, can you introduce yourself? Because you are kind of a staple in Maryland. You've been in the in the medical field for what over 40 years.
44 years I was in practice, yes. I did volunteer work in Central
What's
America, and I enjoyed my practice very much. And I also had an interest in miracles. And so I got, well, I'll tell you what happened. Um, my book is called Evidence Based Miracles. And you can see here, it's got a Caravaggio painting on the front,
that?
which is the Doubting Thomas. So the book is for people who are doubting Thomases. I'm aiming it at Christian agnostics, actually. I'm trying to persuade them that there's a reason to believe. And this
Mhm.
kind of goes back to my um, years ago, I was in a sports club, and I'd swim 30 minutes to come, and I'd join a group in a jacuzzi. And we'd talk about a lot of
Oh,
things. And I was a Catholic representative. There was a very devout Baptist, there was a very devout atheist, and some agnostics. And we got talking about, so why do you believe much? And I said, well, I cannot not believe because I believe in miracles. And they
yes.
said, what? You believe in miracles? I gave everybody a copy of a book called The Voyage to Lourdes by Alexis Carrel. And Alexis Carrel was a prominent researcher and doctor in France. And in 1902, he went as a nice guy. He didn't. He was an atheist, and he just went as a nice guy, accompanying a woman to Lourdes who was dying of tuberculosis. She had disseminated tuberculosis, and he followed her over there. And he thought, why doesn't they leave her at home, let her die at home? Well, they get to Lourdes. She goes into the bath. She sits up and says, give me something to eat, and totally recovers. Well, this blew his mind. This is against everything he knew in science. So the next year he goes to Lourdes again, and there's a child who's born blind who gains sight. Well, Alexis Carrel just couldn't understand this because what everything he knew was this was an opposition to it. So he told the physicians in Paris, and they said, don't believe it. And he was kind of shunned. So he left France, went to the US. He became a Rockefeller scientist, won a Nobel Prize for his work. Eventually, he had to believe. So he became a believer because of the evidence right there. And that's what I'm going by. So I
So
think go ahead.
it's your. No, I was just going to say it's your belief that
Yeah,
miracles still happen today. I think a lot of people think that miracles were only in the Bible, and after the Bible days, there were no more miracles.
yeah. Well, now I've been in practice 44 years. I've seen some amazing recoveries. No miracles, but miracles. Let's go back to Jesus. He had 40 miracles of healing. And so my premise is, if Jesus had these 40 miracles of healing, why can't I pray now to Jesus or God and get a healing? And it does happen, really. So I want to go off to, well, I start with Lourdes, because Lourdes is the one place where a lot of healings occur, allegedly, and they have a medical bureau to study these. Now, Lourdes goes back to 1858 when this young 14-year-old girl said she saw the Blessed Virgin, but nobody believed her. And she kept saying this. And at one point, she was told to dig a hole in the sand. She did. And a spring flew up and water came out. And later on, people started putting their children in the water who were ill, and it healed them. So Lourdes got the water, got a reputation for healing people. So eventually they set up a medical bureau at Lourdes to evaluate these healings. And they scrupulously examine these alleged healings. Now, over time, they've only had 70, but only most people who go to Lourdes, there are 5 million go every year. Many are healed. They don't report to the bureau. They're just healed and go home.
Right.
So these people, if you want to look this up, Lourdes miracles online, you can see all the different miracles. These are people who are dying of serious disease, and the cure is called instantaneous healing, instantaneous, long-lasting. The people pray to God, pray to the Virgin, or pray to Jesus, and it follows that prayer. And I'll give you an example of somebody. Like this guy is a fellow named John Trainer. He came from Ireland, and he was in the First World War, and he suffered injury to his arm. He had a arm that just hang loose. He had seizures. He had paraplegia, and he decided he wanted to go to Lourdes. People said, "No, you can't go to Lourdes. The guy in your condition." Well, he saved money. And he ransomed something, and he got money to go to Lourdes. He went with the tour group. He get to Lourdes, and he went into the baths several times, and he wasn't healed right away, but he kept going. And then eventually he started feeling better, and he realized he could move his legs, and his caretakers didn't believe him. So he was up in his room at night, heard the bells chiming. He runs out of his room. They're chasing after him. He goes down and thanks God for the healing. So he was
Yes.
totally healed, totally healed. And I can cite another one. And one of my favorite books on Lourdes is written by Ruth Cranston, who is she's a Presbyterian, I believe. Her father was a missionary. So it's kind of strange that she would write about Lourdes, but she did. And in one of her stories, there's a child who has meningococcal encephalitis and is in a vegetative state. The mother brings him to the Lourdes bath, and he starts talking, and he's totally healed. And actually, Ruth Cranston, who wrote this book, went to Lourdes and checked this out. And here the kid's the teenager, perfectly normal. So there are many cases. Now, I've been to Lourdes, interesting place to go, because I was a doctor, and they let me attend a meeting to discuss healings. Now,
Mhm.
to be a healing, it can't have any medical treatment at all. So we had some amazing cures discussed, but they had received medicine which had failed, but that doesn't qualify. They have to be pure healed without medicine. And there are many I personally know a doctor, who had cancer, rectal cancer on biopsy. He went to Lourdes, went to Bath, had the surgery, no cancer was found. So there are amazing stories like this of healings, but I don't want you to give the idea it only happens with Catholics, because
Right.
there's a theologian named Lee Strobel. Lee
Hmm.
Strobel is a Baptist. He's a educator. He's written 4 books on religion, bestsellers, and he's written a book which I enjoy. And this is, in case anybody's interested in his book, I would recommend it. It's called "The Case for Lourdes" by Lee Strobel. No, the case for miracles by Lee
Yes.
Strobel. And Lee Strobel, in his book, cites many miracles, people cured of deafness, but one particularly outstanding was a person with severe progressive multiple sclerosis. The person was on life support, um, had contractions, couldn't use her extremities. She was blind, and the church prayed for her, and she was cured. The church, so it's a different way. Um, this is church involved, community involved. So if that is a very good book on that subject.
Well, I think it's really interesting that as a medical professional that you believe in miracles, because often people who are students of the sciences often don't believe in miracles because they think they can explain it away by medical evidence.
Yeah,
But so I think it's very interesting that somebody who has such a background in medicine and science still believes in miracles, which I think is a great thing, actually.
yeah. It doesn't conform to my education at all. It's something beyond. It's something supernatural and associated with Christ, right?
Yes.
So, so one of my major topics is, I mentioned 3 topics. One is the whole story of miracles. Another topic. So if this again, the premise is, if it happened at the time of Christ, why doesn't it happen now? If we pray to Christ, and it does, but it's not very common. Maybe only 1 or 2% get cured. And some people say, why doesn't everybody get cured? It wouldn't take much faith if you just automatically get cured. No, it takes faith and prayer to get cured. The next topic I want to talk to you about.
Well, there we go. I'm about to say I have to bring the camera back down so we can see you.
Okay, good.
There we go.
Is the Shroud of Turin. As you recall, in the Bible, when Peter and John went to the tomb, and the tomb was empty, but there was a 2 cloths there. There was a linen, which was the shroud, and there was something rolled up, which is the part that goes over the head of the deceased. So that was in the Bible, okay? And we know that according to the Bible, Christ was flogged, and he was hung on the cross, nails in his hand, not hands, but in his wrists, feet. So I'm going to get a little history of the Shroud of Turin. You may recall in 1988, they studied this with carbon dating studies, and the dating show that it was about 1300. It can't be the Shroud of Christ. It comes from 1300. And other people say, how can this be? Because everything points to it. Historically, it goes all the way back to about 100 AD as the image of Edessa when they just folded it up and saw the face. So historically, it goes back there. They had pollen from the Holy Land on this shroud. How can it not be? Well, around 2000, some people were looking at this shroud, and they said, there's something wrong about the way this has been sewn together. So they called in textile experts, and sure enough, it had been stitched together, and they took the samples at the spot where it was stitched together. So all the experts who did the study said, no, it's not valid because we took it from a false site. So, so beyond that, when you look at the shroud, I don't know if you've ever seen, every now and then, they used to show it at certain times in Catholic Church. It's now called the Shroud of Turin. It's in Turin, and they haven't shown it for a while, but they have copies of it, which I've seen. And the copies show everything on that shroud is as depicted in the Gospels. It shows where he was carrying the cross. There's bruises on the chest. There's nails through the hands, through the wrists and feet, not the hands. Puncture in the side where the spear was stuck in this at the end in the side, and the flogging marks on his back. So you can take the Bible, and it's depicted right on that shroud. So there's a couple other questions that remain about the shroud. How did it get on there? It's not painted.
Right.
It's not painted. Also, there's blood on the shroud, which is AB, and so it's an amazing document that is historical and communicative of what happened to Christ. It's just also one little tidbit added. When Peter went into the tomb, there was something rolled up in the corner. That was what they call a sudarium, goes over the head. And that is in Spain. For somehow that piece got a different way, and they call it the sudarium of Christi in Spain. Has all the hallmarks of the shroud, has the same blood on it and the same pollen. So they came from the same source, Christ. And so when Peter and John went in there, there's no body. What happened? Now, the depiction on the shroud, the embossed, they try to replicate it. It could come from radiation or heat. And it could speak to he resurrected and came on the shroud. So the Shroud of Turin, I just find is a fascinating historical relationship to Christ. Have I got time here? Yep. Another, the other thing I want to point out is the story of apparitions. Now, most apparitions occur in the Catholic Church, and most of them are people imagining they see the Blessed Virgin. And the Catholic Church has studied 300 and says there are 8 worthy of worship. But they're not saying you have to, but they're worthy of it. Now, there are 3 apparitions I want to mention. One is, of course, Lourdes. We know we have miracles at Lourdes all the time. So I would say the apparition that Bernadette had is shown out by the fact that all these people are cured at Lourdes. Number 2 is Fatima. Fatima, some young children in 1917 said they saw the Blessed Virgin. And people again said, yeah, a bunch of nonsense. And so these were young kids, the oldest being 9. And they hung to it and they said, okay, prove it. So the Blessed Virgin said, okay, we're going to have a miracle at a certain time on a certain day. And sure enough, noon, 60,000 people or more were gathered to see this. At noon, these people gathered there, and it was at noon, it was raining, the sun came out, and the sun started moving. It started shooting off colors into the firmament, and then it started dancing around the sky, and it's called the Miracle of the Sun. It lasted about 4 or 5 minutes. So that's pretty, and all these people saw it, and it's reported in the newspaper. So it happened. Another one is Our Lady of Guadalupe. Our Lady of Guadalupe, an Indian in 1531 said he saw the Blessed Virgin. Again, people didn't believe him. So he went to the bishop. The bishop said, well, I want evidence. So he goes back and he collects in December. He collects his roses in December to bring to the bishop. He opens up his cloak, and there's this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe on his cloak. I've seen this on several occasions. It's now in a glass case, but that image, again, they don't know how it got on there. It's not painted. And they examine the eyes. The eyes on the image are almost lifelike. And they examine the eyes under 2500 power magnification. And on the cornea, they can see all the people who were there at the time. So I'd say that's another miraculous situation with associated with an apparition.
Well, you said you have these conversations with your, with colleagues and with your friends, and you talked about how you all met and you talked about this.
Yeah.
What has been their reaction to your book? Have they had a chance to read your book and give you some feedback?
Like the colleagues in the swim club, no, the book just came recent, and that was a long time ago. So I don't know. I don't know whether or not, but I have.
Yeah, I mean,
given the book. I've sold
curious.
20 books on Amazon. I've given away 80, and a lot of people really like it, and some people don't. Okay. The thing I want to discuss, if I have time.
Yeah, you're good.
This is Our Lady. As nobody's heard about this. Our Lady of Zaytun. A Lady of Zaytun appeared in Zaytun, Egypt, on a church. Now, this is nothing Catholic. This is the Coptic Orthodox Church. And the Coptic is a very small church. And what happened, actually, they think that St. Mark went to Egypt and was martyred there. That's maybe apocryphal, but he was martyred there. So they believe that they have a pope, is the successor to Mark, not Peter. Any event, in 1967, there was a war between Egypt and Israel. And the Egyptians lost. So the Muslim majority, which is about 90%, started beating up on the minority Copts. And then this apparition occurs on top of a Coptic church at night. And people thought, who's that lady there? And they recognized her as the Virgin Mary. And the Muslims love the Virgin Mary. They think she's the most righteous woman ever. So this was a way to bring the Copts and the Muslims together when they saw her. And she appeared for over 2 years, 2 or 3 times a week. And she was seen by up to 1 million people in that time. People of all religions saw her. And it was reported in the newspaper. And nobody knows about it because it's a small church. There's only 10, 12 million people in the world. And nobody knows about it. But the other thing, if you go on YouTube and you say Our Lady of Zaytun on YouTube, it'll tell you about it and it'll show you photographs. So this is the only one that's been photographed. So she's photographed, and as well as now she didn't talk at all, but she's on this church and she bows and she blesses people and she bows before the cross, and there are doves flying around. Could be the Holy Spirit, whatever. But I went, so to check this out, there happens to be a Coptic Orthodox church not far from where I live. So I went down there one morning with my book, and the room was full of Egyptians or Egyptian Americans. But they had a little eating after the Mass. They had a little lunch in there, and they invited me to there. And I talked to several of them who said they actually saw this apparition in Egypt. So that's another reason to believe, if you accept I've given you reasons to believe there's miracles, there's
Yes.
apparitions, and there's the Shroud of Turin. Now, one other thing, I got a few more minutes. I didn't mention that there's a person named Josephus. And Josephus was a Jewish fellow who somehow managed to not get killed by the Romans and became a Roman general. And then he wrote a book in 1994. It was about 60 years after Christ had died. He wrote a book, Antiquities of the Jews, goes all the way back to the history of the Jews. And he's, for people who don't believe Christ existed, he points out that there was this wonder worker and he was crucified. He mentioned John the Baptist and James, God's Christ's brother. So there's evidence there if you doubt it. Some people believe that Jesus didn't exist, like maybe Moses didn't, but
I feel
Jesus
sorry for
didn't.
people who don't believe that Jesus existed.
What's that?
I feel sorry for people who don't believe in Jesus.
Yeah, they believe that there are some people that don't believe it is. In fact, I go to classes. I take courses in the Hebrew Bible, and our teachers signed it. It says Moses didn't exist and maybe Jesus didn't. I said, what? So I brought him a book. Said Jesus did exist. It's called by
Yeah.
Bart Ehrman, who's a skeptic, but he wrote that book that Jesus does exist and there's evidence that he did exist. So there you have it.
Well,
So if anybody is interested in buying books out, Miracles of Lords, of course you can always buy my book if you want.
we want to buy your book. Tell us where to find yours.
What's that?
So tell us where to find your book.
Yeah, Evidence-Based Faith. It's on Amazon for $10.99. And the best book on Lords is this, written by this Presbyterian, Ruth Cranston. I can get that cheaply. She wrote that in 1955. And The Voyage to Lords is a classic. That's by Alexis Carrel, the atheist who finally became a believer. The Voyage to Lords.
That's a miracle. Well, I've got to tell you, Mr. Edward, I knew that this was going to be an interesting conversation. Like I said, I think it's wonderful that a man with such a storied medical background, still believes in God, still believes in miracles. You're not trying to explain everything away by science. And I think that's wonderful. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for writing this book.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
All right, you have a wonderful evening. Thanks.
Enjoyed
again.
it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Can I stay on for the next person, or
you can listen to it from the background if you'd like, though.
from the background?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll put you backstage so you can still listen in.
Backstage. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, y'all. That was Dr. Edward Feroli, and his book is called Evidence-Based Faith. You can find it on Amazon. Very, very interesting topics. So hopefully you guys will go to Amazon and check it out. But before you do that, I need y'all to stick around because my very special guest, my daughter, who looks a little bit like me, will be coming on to talk about her new poetry book. It's called Things We Don't Tell. And I'll let her explain why she named the book that. But this young lady has accomplished so much in life. And I'm really excited that she finally decided to publish her poetry book because, hey, girl.
Hi.
Yeah, so she had been kind of secretly writing poetry for the last few years, and I didn't realize. And then we got to talking, and she said she had about 13 or 14 poems. I was like, why don't we go ahead and put those in a book? And surprisingly, she agreed. And because these are very personal stories, which is why we call it a memoir in poetry, because each of the poems in the book correlates with something that's happened throughout her life. and when I say that she's accomplished a lot, she has accomplished a lot. 2017 Miss New Orleans City Queen for National All American Miss. She is a cum laude graduate of the Clark Atlanta University. She is a former preschool teacher. She now works for the federal government, and she's also in the Queen's Court for National American Miss. What year was that? 2023.
Yep, that was 2023.
See, so she has a lot going on. So I just thought it was very poignant that she decided to share herself in this way. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Beautiful introduce herself to all of you.
Okay, well, hello everyone. As my mother said, I'm beautiful. I'm 25. I currently work TSA at the Reagan Airport. And like she said, I've been writing poetry for the last few years. I started in college on a class that I was taking with someone I was dating at the time, and we wanted to have one class together, so we decided to do a poetry class. And that's how I met Queen Sheba, who was kind of the inspiration behind a lot of my poems. And it was a good way for me to like kind of open up and express myself in a way that wasn't just what I had already done in pageants, which was singing or trying to get into dancing. I feel like of all of the things that I tried throughout my life, I think poetry is what really stuck.
So first first of all, you mentioned Queen Sheba in your book. Can you tell me why she was such an inspiration to you?
Yeah, Queen Sheba was invited to teach a class at my school by the school board. She's a master poet, and it was the first time we had ever had a poetry class at my school. And so all of it was a trial run, is what I like to think of it as. Um, throughout the semester, we practiced writing our own raps about ourselves. We focused on different kinds of poems and tried to write our own based on the examples that she would give. She even organized a spoken word for us at the end of the semester so that way we could like tell the rest of the school what we had been writing. And I even got one of my poems published in the CAU review.
Yeah, I remember when you announced that to the family that you had gotten published in the CAU review, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that was a really cool time for me because I think I was more of a kind of a fall in the background type of person when I was in college. So everything I did in her class was what helped me come out of my shell now.
Well, that's awesome. Oh, I forgot to mention that you were also Miss Congeniality in the Miss Phi Beta Sigma pageant.
Yeah, I think that was around the same time I was in this class actually.
Yes. Well, Mark says congratulations on the release of your poetry book, and he said his first book was also a poetry book.
Oh, okay.
So, what what do you think it was that just really attracted you to writing poetry? Because, and the reason why I ask is I don't even know if you remember what, but when you were a lot younger, you used to write your own songs. You didn't call them poetry; you were just writing songs.
Yeah, I remember that. When we were going to church, I think after the church service, I would be like hit with inspiration to try to write my own church song. And I don't know, I think in my head, I was gonna be like Alicia Keys one day. And I was gonna like learn how to play piano too. And I was gonna like be full on Alicia Keys and take on her legacy one of these days.
You can still do that.
I don't know. I don't know. Because she got up there in the Super Bowl singing with Usher. I don't think I would have been able to do all that.
Well, tell us about things we don't tell.
Okay. Well, I titled it Things We Don't Tell because I think every poem in here was something I was like too scared to talk about at some point. Or even if I wasn't too scared to talk about it with someone, I didn't know who to tell about it. You know, when you kind of feel like you're just rambling, you're just ranting on, and you're like, don't nobody want to hear me complain. That's kind of how a lot of my poems started out. It's like, well, I don't want to be the person that complains about everything. Maybe I'll just write it out, and if somebody's interested, I'll tell it about it one day.
Okay. So now, were you a little nervous about showing me the poems? Because I had never read any of your poetry before.
I would say maybe a little bit, but you know, I'm an adult now. I think I think when I was young, I was like what, 18, 19 years old when I first started writing poetry. And a lot of it was I had things I wanted to say. I just didn't know how to articulate it. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to start a conversation I don't know how to finish.
Right. Understood. Understandable.
hmm
Okay. So what would you say is your signature poem in the book, or what is your favorite poem in the book?
I think my favorite poem in the book would have to be Pariah.
Interesting.
Because Pariah is all about how I would meet people, I would go on dates, and I just don't feel like I'm connecting. Or it was just something I felt like was off about that person. And I thought, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just not emotionally available enough to like pursue anything with anyone right now. And I think a lot of the poem was me thinking to myself on, is there like something wrong with me? And then towards the end, I say, you know what? No, there's nothing wrong with me. Okay. I'm not going to say it's everybody else, but I think what I'm going through is completely normal for me and anyone else who might be in that same mindset. And I shouldn't talk down about myself just because I'm not doing something that someone else is doing. Just because someone else is going on dates and meeting people and I'm not, that doesn't mean that I'm a problem. It just means there's something I need to work out and that maybe I just haven't finished working it out yet.
Wow. That's some really good self-reflection and self-accountability. Um,
hmm
because not many people will want to admit that to themselves.
And that's kind of the basis behind a lot of my poems. It was, I think my early days in college was me thinking maybe there's just something wrong with me. And just over time, I put myself into a depression because I wasn't talking about any of it with anyone. I was just sitting in the feelings and I didn't know how to express any of it. And that's why I go back to Queen Sheba when she taught me how to like voice some of what was going on in my own head. And then I did eventually get into a little bit of therapy, and that's when I started doing a lot more self reflections. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not the problem. All of these people we have in this world, I'm not the only one going through what I'm going through right now. Like maybe it's time for me to start opening up. And as soon as I started opening up, I realized, wow, there's so many other people who have the same mindset that I have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you're right. And I talk about this quite a bit in my social media, is that sometimes people don't feel like their story is worth telling
hmm
because they think that they're the only one going through it and everybody else has it all together except for them. And if
hmm
they just get enough bravery to tell their story, they may wind up helping somebody else. So there's somebody who might be reading your poems and and it'll go through their heads, wow, there's somebody else out there who understands what I'm going through. That's exactly the way I feel.
hmm And that's why I wanted to put all of them in a book, to try to relate or help someone else relate. Just as a reminder that you're not the only one going through this. Like there's a whole community of people who think just like you.
Right. And when you can find people who can understand what you're going through, it's easier to articulate what you're going through, and you can actually kind of work through it that way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I also for me as your mom, I always thought that we had an open relationship where you can talk to me about anything, but I shouldn't be the only person that you can talk to. Or there might be some times where you don't want to talk to your mom about it, your friend or your boyfriend or whomever, you know.
Right. I think it's important to have multiple people in your corner that you could talk to about different things, not just one person, you know?
Right. Well, I say the same thing about Christianity because sometimes you'll hear Christians say things like, "I'm just happy with Jesus alone," and I'm not worried about this world as long as I got God on my side, and which is true. God is going to
Hmm.
be there for you, and God will fight your battles. However, you're not meant to be in this world by yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. And you can't ignore all of the people that God puts in your life to help you get through whatever you're trying to get through.
Amen. Amen. Well, there were a couple of comments that popped up. LaRonda said the beauty of poetry is that it often answers questions we didn't know we had, and that your bravery is inspiring.
Thank you.
And then Mark said that this is how he started writing poetry. It was an escape for him from his reality, especially growing up in a rough environment, being bullied, etc.
Hmm.
Now I know you went through a time where you may not have been physically bullied. And I think sometimes people need to understand that. I needed to understand that just because you're not physically bullied doesn't mean that you're not mentally bullied.
Hmm.
And I know you had gone through a time where you were saying I'm being bullied in school, and I didn't think you were at first because I'm like, what, this, they're not hitting you and this and that, and so, but I had to realize that it was a different type of bullying.
Hmm. I definitely went through a period of time where people find a way to make fun of you over anything. Like you could sit in a room by yourself or sit in a room completely quiet and to yourself, and people would still find something to say about you. And that's something I definitely had to realize over time. Because, like I said before, a lot of times I'm like, is it me? What did I do? You know, what did I say? Could I have said it differently? But like people will make fun of me saying my name shouldn't have been beautiful. And I had to realize they're just jealous because their name isn't beautiful, you know?
They're
And it's like,
jealous because
so
you're not beautiful.
exactly, you know? Or they would say like just anything. Like she thinks she's all that because she got this, and that going on. And it's like, well, why shouldn't I think that I'm all that because I have this, and that going on? I never said that made me better than you. I just have this, and that going on, and you may not.
Absolutely,
That's no
absolutely.
reason to talk about anyone, you know?
Well, we have another comment in here. I went through a period of mental bullying, and it was so hard having to explain it to my parents as well. So, I mean, sometimes I think we only think about bullying in one way, but it's just like
Hmm.
domestic violence. Domestic violence is not just physical, it can be
Hmm.
mental, it can be spiritual, it can be financial. There are different types of domestic violence, just like there are different types of bullying. And I was really happy when you started doing the pageants that you made that your platform. You wanted to give people a voice who didn't feel like they had a voice.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I think for a long period of time, I didn't feel like I had a voice. I was just taking in all of the negativity that was around me. And I think once I had started getting over that and overcoming it, I wanted to go ahead and be the voice that I had wanted. So yeah, I made that my platform for when I was starting out in pageants. My first pageant was in New Orleans. And I was going for the state title. And I didn't get the state title, but I got the city title, and I still felt like super awesome about myself because the entire pageant was based around self confidence. And they always said, even if you don't win anything, you can walk away with being more confident about yourself. And part of the way they would do that is they would award everyone for everything. You could have breathed, and they would have awarded you like best breather in the pageant. Like,
But no, don't just play it down because you went home with a few awards, and it wasn't for breathing either.
okay, okay, I did, but I like the fact that it was more of a lose win dignity type of deal. Like you, they said you could get an award for being the most authentically yourself, and I think that was one of the awards that I got.
You got a couple. I don't remember what they were, but I know we brought home some trophies.
We did. We
So
did.
I'm
First
happy.
runner up. I got first runner up in the singing competition. And that was really
Mm-hmm.
cool because I didn't think I was going to win anything in that competition. There were some really good singers in that competition. I
That's
think I got
true.
an
That's
award
true.
in the acting competition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember all the awards. I do remember walking in with a couple certificates.
But the thing is, you went home with something.
Yeah, uh-huh. And I did walk away with feeling more confident about myself. I think that's what helps me in my job interviews now.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing I do like about the National American Miss Pageants is the interview portion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of how you score. And that's a big part of
Mm-hmm.
getting chosen for the competitions is the interview. And you're right. Just about every job you've applied for since you left college, you've been able to get because you always do well on the interview. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
be part of your training from the pageants.
And that's true because the number one thing people had always said from every job interview I had gotten after the pageant was, I love the way you speak and I love the way you carry yourself. And I have to relate all of that back to the NAM pageants.
All right, I love that. So now you have your first book signing coming up. So I do want to clarify, and you clarified it as well. I said that this was your first book. This is your first singular book, as in your book that you're not sharing with somebody else, and it's your first poetry book. But you were also published in a new Renaissance, and I don't have that book with me right now. Oh, yes, I do. You were also published in a new Renaissance.
Yep, I wrote my children's story.
Yes, the story of Princess Beautiful.
Uh-huh. And that was a story we wrote together.
Yes,
I
we
think
wrote it.
what, I was
We were,
6 or 5.
you were very young, and I really credit that whole story to you because I wrote it. But I would ask you, okay, well, beautiful, what should happen now, or how did they find the princess? And you said I went ahead and put it into the story, so it was really your story. All I did was just write it down. But that was a really fun project that we were able to do when you were young. And I'm really glad that we held on to the story and that we finally had a chance to publish it. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm always going to value this book. But I
Mhm.
also value Things We Don't Tell because one thing about me, if I have a platform, you have a platform. I mean, the first play that I ever produced, or the first play I produced, Cheating in the Next Room, you were a producer. But then the second play, which was Twilight, you were one of the starring characters.
Yep, I was Twilight.
Yes. And I'll tell you, people would ask me and say, "Are you sure you wanted to do that?" Because the main character actually gets sexually assaulted
Hmm.
in the very first scene, and they're like, "Are you going to be able to handle your daughter going through that?" I'm like, she's an actress and she can do it, and you did a really good job with that scene.
As serious as the subject was, I will always remember those rehearsals where I had to rehearse being sexually assaulted and all my karate moves kept coming out at inappropriate times. Man, my co-star, he would like come at me and I would just reflex. I remember everyone kept saying, "Beautiful, you have to stop beating up your co-star." I'm like, "I'm sorry, it was a reflex. I didn't mean to."
I thought I think it's awesome, but you did a really good job in that play. And yes, it was a very serious subject, and you all handled it well, and was still able to have some funny moments. But it
Hmm.
but it was such a serious subject that you guys handled with such grace, and I I was amazed. Oh, Mark said he watched the play. He read the
Oh,
book, but he also watched the play.
okay.
He said you did a great job.
Thank you.
Now, now, what I was going to say though is that you have a book signing coming up on Thursday. Your very first book signing. You're going
Yeah.
to be signing copies of Things We Don't Tell, and it's going to be at the Urban Grape Winery. So I'm excited about that. Here's the flyer for it. There we go. There we go. So here's the flyer. You're going to be doing this book signing with two other authors, Chanel Ramos and Pamela Coleman, both amazing young ladies. And this is for Pride Month. We were actually invited to come back and do a book signing at Urban Grape Winery. And I was excited about being able to come back and then being able to provide this platform for you to share your story. And so this is going to be something kind of new for you as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. I'm going pen shopping. I need to come with like a really cool pen. Okay. I've been practicing my signature at work. I'm ready.
Okay, so anybody who would like to come out, I would love to see all of you come out. This is a free event. There are going to be wine tastings throughout the event. In fact, the winery emailed me today and gave me the lineup of the wines, and all of the wines are representative of the LGBTQ plus community. I never think I say it right, but
Just call them the Alphabet Squad. That's all right.
I try
Alphabet Gang.
I try to be respectful.
There's a lot of letters in this community, you know.
This is true, but I do want you to come out, be a part of the event, taste the wine, get your book signed by these three lovely young ladies, especially this one on screen right now. And you've actually already been signing some books.
Yep, I signed a couple. A couple of my friends came over and bought a book from me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love the support. They said that we want ours signed first. They said just and it's just so they could have street cred. Yeah, yeah, beautiful. I knew her first. I knew her before the book. I'm like, you guys are silly.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. So hopefully they're still going to come out and they're going to bring friends. We want to have a
Yes.
really good turnout for this.
Yes, I've been promoting it as well in some of the communities that I'm in. And a couple of people have said that they are absolutely ready to pop out.
Okay, pop out.
Hmm.
All
Yeah. They said they want to roll in deep. I said, all right. Okay.
right. I like it. I'm not mad at that. Okay, so now do you think is this something you might want to do again? Maybe write some more poems?
And see, I haven't given up on writing poems. I can't say I'm taking a break from them. I just only write poems when inspiration hits. I can't
Right.
just sit and try to think of something else to write. I have to just wait for it to pop in my head and kind of let it flow from there. And that's what every last one of these poems were. It was me doing a self-reflection and then boom, inspiration would hit. But all of these poems took me years to write.
That is true. That is true. And I know you said you wrote it as just as the inspiration hit you. Is there anything you want to is there a poem you might want to share with us? Give us a little sneak peek.
I mean, if you want, like okay, okay. All right, I'll read the first poem.
Okay. Which one is the first one?
The first poem is Heartbreak, and I'm going to read that one because I believe that one's the most recent poem.
Okay.
All right. When opportunity arose, I chose to dance with the idea of being the villain. I created endless scenarios of burning the world to the ground, endless scenarios of tearing everything apart. I danced with the devil. In my mind, I was Queen Dagmar, as if everything I've done in my life has been prepping me for this moment. And as the Queen of Hell, I was determined to not stop until the world fell. However, my two left feet and both sides of my brain and the will I have left forced me to stop standing on his feet.
Beautiful. What you mean you want to burn the world to the ground?
I was salty in this poem. I was mad about life, mad about everything. I think the person I liked didn't like me back and I was over it. I say,
Well,
you know what? I'm sick of it. I'm gonna be a villain. I'm just gonna be a villain. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not playing nice guy anymore.
wow. See, that one person.
But however, like I said in the poem, I can't dance. So how am I supposed to dance with the devil? And
Well,
and
one
I
thing
said, and you know what? Since I can't dance, that would only mean I would have to let the devil lead me. And as a Christian woman, I could never let that happen. So I can't stand on his feet.
there you go. There you go. Now, one thing I can say is that after each poem, you talk a little bit about where you were at that time. And then
Hmm.
you have questions where you kind of challenge the reader to do their own self-reflection.
Yep. I did all this self-reflecting for everyone else. Now you gotta self-reflect too in this book too. Like you gotta think to yourself, when was the last time you were rejected? How did you feel? Was that your final reason why? You know? Did you contemplate being the villain?
Okay. I actually like that. I like the fact that this isn't just a book where you get to flip through the poems. You actually get to do a little self-reflection, do a little self-digging, and then maybe come out a little bit different on the other side. And then the book is not so long to where it feels like a chore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, it's very easy to get through this book. It's all about self-reflections. I'm gonna tell you where I was at. I want to hear where you were at too. And every last one of these thoughts.
All right, now this book can be purchased on Amazon. It can be purchased on Barnes and Noble, on the Meet the World Image Solutions website, and soon it's going to be at Walmart, walmart.com.
Oh, oh, okay,
Yes.
okay, okay.
Oh yeah, I gotta learn how to do that. Is that how you do it?
Yes, yes. So we don't say period anymore, Mom B.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or you could even do the two fingers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I'm learning. Living with these young folks, you learn a little something, something. Well, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for I know it's been a bumpy ride, but I thank you for making it to the other side. I thank you for keeping your faith. I thank you for the beautiful poetry book. Because that was only one poem. There are some other ones in there that just make you stop and go, whoa. And so I really enjoyed that. I hope that you do decide to continue to write, even if it's children's books, because you've done all this self-reflection, you've had those life lessons learned. Why not put them into a children's book and maybe inspire some other kids so that way they don't maybe not make the same mistakes that you made in life.
Mm-hmm. I could. I could. You know, I used to be a pre-K teacher. I don't know if
I
y'all knew
know.
that.
I know. So you already know how to do this. That's so, but no, like I said, thank you for everything. I'm yeah, my soror. I don't know if you remember.
I do. Hey Val. Hey Soror.
Yeah, okay. So yeah. So proud mama moment, yes. So yeah, please go out and purchase this book. You can either order it from Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can get it at the Meet the World Image Solutions website, or you can come to the book signing on Thursday at Urban Grape Winery, right over here. It'll be from 5:30 to 7:30, right in DC. And this event is absolutely free. So come in, get some wine, meet the authors, get a book signed, and let's have a good time and vibe out just like we did back in February.
Yep. Can't wait
All
to see you guys there.
right. All right. So that's all we have for tonight, guys. Lots of things going on. Lots and lots of things going on. If you would like to be a guest in the Horizons Author Lounge, then hit your girl up so you can get that information. We can get you scheduled. We're just about filled up for the month of June. I think we only have maybe 1 or 2 slots left. And so we're moving into July. And then if you want to take your appearance a little bit further, we have paid options where you can get press releases, media pitches, a media kit. What we're trying to do is we want to, you've already started the platform by writing the book. We just want to build on that platform and take you even further. We want to make sure that people know your name in this industry. And so that's what I want to help you to do. So if you want more information on that, just comment under this post, under this show, press, and I will send you all the information. But that's all we have for tonight. So I'm your girl, Dr. Rhonda M. Lawson. This is my daughter, Miss Beautiful Lawson. And once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for helping us to grow. If you have not followed us on YouTube, please do so. Our goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers for the Horizons Author Lounge I'm going to say in the next 2 weeks. I'm standing on faith on that. We're going to get to 1,000 subscribers. So y'all go ahead and go in and follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, and help us to monetize this show so we can continue to grow. But that's all I have for tonight, guys. Love you guys. Have a wonderful evening. God bless you and good night.